Okay, welcome Cassie from San Mateo County Health to talk about the Aging and Adult Services and Adult Protective Services.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity for me to present this afternoon. My intent is to kind of give you an overview of services that we provide here within San Mateo County for older and dependent adults. Also, kind of just how we work to support uh, our community when it comes to resources, different programs, but I also want to talk about different types of abuses that we do see within older and dependent adults. So my name is Cassie Villar. I'm with San Mateo County. We are the health department, and the umbrella we are under is aging and adult services. And lastly, I know it's a little confusing, but then my department specifically is adult protective services. Just a quick overview, like I mentioned, we are here to support older independent adults any way we can, as long as a person is receptive to receiving services. So a little about myself. I've been here with the County of San Mateo for 23 years. This is my 23rd year. 20 years was with Children and Family Services, working with foster youth. And the past 2 years, a little over 2 years, I've been on the other side of the spectrum with aging and adult services. So definitely well versed in different areas of service needs and different demographics. But let's kind of just talk about our county in a unique sense that here in San Mateo County, when we're talking about our own demographics, we're considered a little more on the seasoned side. We're about 1 in 4 residents will be over 65 in less than 10 years. So our demographic, especially within our community, tends to be older. Also, our young baby boomers will be 65, at least 65 by 2030, as well as you see in our own community, people are living longer. The youngest person I had come to one of my presentations was 99 years young. And so as you see, our demographics are changing within our community. And for my department specifically, Adult Protective Services, we investigate, support any type of abuse claims or concerns regarding older independent adults who live independently. We're all about independence. You can live in a multi-generational house, apartment. As long as you're independent, making your own decisions, you would contact our department. Anybody, for instance, who is in a long-term care facility, you would contact the Ombudsman program. For my department, effective January 1st, 2022, an older adult is defined as 60 and up, and a dependent adult is between the ages of 18 to 59. Well, like I mentioned, we do support dependent adults, and our population is very unique. A dependent adult is somebody who has physical, maybe mental limitations and needs help uh, for their day-to-day activities. If you're not sure, we will always encourage you to call our hotline if you're not sure if a person qualifies for a dependent adult, and I will give you that information shortly. Here's a big takeaway. The biggest takeaway that I could tell you, working for older independent adults, is that our programs, almost clear across the board, are entirely voluntary. Think about that again. Really? Yes, because we are adults, we have decisions that we make beyond our own. And most, like I mentioned, programs are voluntary. So if a person chooses not to want to work with a social worker or maybe connect with resources, that's their choice. Anytime there's any criminal issues, we always cross-report to the police department. But then other than that, as adults, we make our own decisions, good or bad. Also, lastly, when it comes to capacity, and that is a concern with a lot of community members, is capacity. The only way we legally can make a decision on another person's behalf as an adult is if a conservatorship is signed by a judge. Our social workers can petition for conservatorship to be initiated, but that process will take place, and until a judge signs off in an agreement, that individual can make their own decisions legally. Here's some common myths about my department. We do not remove people from their home. That's a number one concern I hear. Absolutely not. We cannot enter your house without your permission. We also cannot tell you what to do, such as you have to go to your medical appointments. We can encourage you, but that looks different than telling you you have to go, or and making decisions on your behalf. We do not work with immigration. We cannot share confidential information. And we also do not make medical diagnosis. When we're talking about different types of abuse, it looks different and also similar as children. Three big differences for adults is it's not listed here, but we can self-neglect ourselves. That's different than a child. We can also be financially abused as an adult, but we also can be abandoned, which is also when somebody is taking care of you because you're not able to. So those are a little bit different. But overall, anytime somebody has been physical, that is abusive. Hitting, kicking, slapping, sexual abuse does occur. We do see a little bit higher in our dependent adults, specifically, for example, an individual who is nonverbal, not able to speak. Emotional definitely happens, can be a burnout caregiver or a family member, friend, you name it, just really creating a lot of havoc in the person's life. Neglect, but we can also self-neglect ourselves by not meeting the basic needs of food, clothing, housing. I have my own trainings for financial, and I do them here. I just did one, I believe, a month ago. So if you're interested in that, please come and attend one of those trainings. But vulnerability factors are really, really important. And that's also because it's a little generational. When we're talking to 60 to 100 years plus, that's 40 years of difference, right? It's almost like comparing me at 41 to a newborn. That's a lot of difference from a newborn to my age. And some vulnerability factors we see are just generational. I grew up in a multi-generational house. And so for me, it was very common for my grandparents, who were like a World War II generation, to really trust people. They trusted your word. They trusted your a handshake. And because of that, people would take advantage of that generation differently than maybe my mother's generation, who are the baby boomers. They typically could be a lot more skeptical, where their parents could be a lot more trusting. Depression is definitely huge, um, because it affects differently. It could affect your mind, your health, your confidence when making decisions. And a lot of people don't want to be viewed as I'm a burden. And so these are different ways that people might not be feeling good about themselves, but that's an easy way for you to be vulnerable because you're not at your best. Also, most of the time when there's one abuse happening, there's usually a little bit more. For instance, it might be the son who's supposed to take care of his mom, but he takes money from her checking account every month without asking for permission. And he also might be yelling at her because he's frustrated. He might also be choosing to neglect her in certain ways, maybe not going grocery shopping when food is low. So those are just examples of different ways that abuse can happen in different ways. Also, it's really challenging when the perpetrator is someone you know, because there's a lot of emotions, especially a lot of protection. It could be family members, caregivers, loved ones. We tend to find the human piece really, really challenging when somebody's being harmed because they are trying to be protective of their loved one. And a lot of victims don't see themselves as victims. And that makes it hard for the police department if there's some criminal aspects occurring to create a case to prosecute. It's really hard to prosecute when a victim doesn't see themselves as a victim. Let's just kind of mention different ways of looking at abuse for older adults. Isolation's huge. It could be in forms of different ways, maybe some, living alone, or maybe not having access to get out, maybe your health barriers. But a red flag can also just be fearful of caregivers, decision makers. I like that to call that your intuition. Usually something feels off. Maybe that person's not answering any health questions. Hey, you look thin. How's your medication? Are you okay? Are you dizzy? Evading bruises. We also acknowledge older adults can still be in relationships where domestic violence is a part of the relationship. It just might look different. Because as we get older, we have excuses as falling more, also medication that bruises. But areas we typically don't see bruising is in like the neck, bottom of feet, in between thighs. Also, weight loss is really big and missed doctor's appointments. But financially, it's very, I could literally give a couple hour trainings because 1 hour is not enough for how many different ways older independent adults can be financially taken advantage. And that could just be simple taking money and property without permission, but like I mentioned, older adults tend to be a little bit more forgiving, but they might also build a relationship where they trust someone, sign a document, and not know what they're actually signing. Here in our community, an average house is over $1 million. So if that person who's in their 90s bought their house for $35,000 in the 50s, they are now sitting on 2 million example of equity in that house. And we've had victims sign documents and sign over their house not knowing what they were signing. Also, it's good to update personal finance, such as your wills, power attorney, but it becomes abusive if someone's doing it to get something from you. Lastly, the telemarketers, scams, hands down, really, really bad. We're seeing a lot of stuff at our community level. A lot of it's international. There is some locally that people are victims of scams. But like I mentioned, I do this training. And so let me just kind of give you a quick, like really, really quick summary of different types of scams that we are seeing for older independent adults. Love scams are extremely popular still, and that's usually online. They spend a lot of time with people. They can meet people on a text message, an email, a group, a direct message, maybe Facebook Market, Instagram, any social dating apps, anywhere you could talk to somebody. And it becomes a friendship, and then over time, a relationship, and then money is asked in different forms. Money is looking different now. Money can be not just cash like the older days, but money is now gift cards, cryptocurrency, wire transfers, and cash. These are different ways to look at how people are being exploited. Grandparent scam, as you kind of are like, really, the grandparent scam targets older adults. I don't get that phone call. And typically they're scaring people to think their grandchild is an emergency. Emergencies can be their grandchild is in jail. They got in a car accident and had a pregnant woman. And so they're always trying to scare people so that you don't hang up the phone and call to see if your grandchild is really okay. We are seeing AI, artificial intelligence, playing into this more with the use of voices and images. And so I do a little more conversation, but this training today is a little more focused on support programs for older independent adults. Family caregivers, it does happen. Absolutely does happen. We did have a victim, and it was sad because the caregiver was caring for their parent for years and were part of this family's home. But unfortunately, our social worker worked with the family and the caregiver stole $80,000 from this family. And that was absolutely devastating. But also family can steal from their own loved ones. When the social worker originally reached out, the family did not believe that the caregiver would do this. And that's that protective area of, I don't think they would. And sometimes the people you least expect are the ones who harm. Tech support, and that's can be as simple as doing an Amazon return, thinking you're talking to Amazon. Maybe you thought you were talking to Amazon, and now they're asking to log into your computer. So you let them log into your computer, and then they ask for your bank account. What? Yes, this has happened to my own friend. Was in his 70s, and he said, why would Amazon need my bank account? I was just trying to do a return. In the moment, the customer service is good and they're like, hey, can I get your checking account? I want to make sure you receive your refund so you don't have to wait an extra couple business days. Once I see it in, I'll log out. Yeah, but they got your bank account information. It can be also tech support can be pop-ups on a computer where you think it's Microsoft and it's really not Microsoft. Lastly, we're seeing also lottery scams, sweepstakes scams. I call that like my junk email. You won a gift card. You won this. How do you win something you never signed up for? And also, anytime there's a fee involved, it's not true. Like you win a raffle and you go to get the basket and they charge you to get the basket. That's that's actually not uh a solid raffle. Here's a quick video I just want to give you lastly, and this is just my last kind of focus on looking at different ways we can be exploited. And then the second part, as I transition, will be more of the services that are provided. But keep in mind, this is a police training video, and this is a part of our task force here within San Mateo County that I will mention in a second, but it is within our community. Like I mentioned, it's a police department video, but these are different ways our own community members do get financially harmed.
Patricia King was a widow who was living alone in East Palo Alto. She was diagnosed with dementia. Miss King was 88 years old in 2008 when her niece, Miss Remmert, moved in with her. It was helpful to her at the outset to have her niece living with her because it was somebody to help her out around the house and keep her company. What she started to do was slowly consolidate her aunt's financial accounts, and she also had her aunt sign a quitclaim deed to her home, transferring ownership of the home from Miss King to Miss Remmert, the offender. Miss Remmert's cousins were becoming increasingly concerned about their aunt because of the isolation of Miss King, that Miss Remmert was imposing. She was making it increasingly difficult for family members to come and visit.
Shirley began to isolate my aunt by becoming more limiting of the family and also of her friends and church members of coming to see my Aunt Pat.
Shirley Remmert had changed the locks on the exterior fence surrounding the home and had changed the locks on the home itself. So family members could no longer gain access to the home.
I had called my aunt and I let her know that I was coming.
I called the police.
Okay, all I want to do is see Auntie Pat.
I don't
and
care.
Shirley called the police and asked that the police remove me from the house.
There were multiple parties that made reports to Adult Protective Services expressing concern about Miss King's welfare. One of the reports came from the bank where she had a checking account. She went to the bank on 4 occasions and she made 4 $10,000 withdrawals. The amount of those withdrawals combined with how close in time they all were caught the bank's attention, and Bank of America made a report to Adult Protective Services that these were suspicious transactions on an elder's account and asked Adult Protective Services to look into them.
A social worker who's described as a deputy public guardian who does just financial abuse cases became involved in the case because of the financial allegations.
They phoned Miss Remmert in advance and they made arrangements to meet up with Miss Remmert at Miss King's house. The deputy public guardian made the decision to reach out to the East Palo Alto Police Department and ask them please to send an officer as a civil standby to simply provide safety and make sure that things at the home went as smoothly as possible.
She kind of gave me a brief of who she was going to talk to and why she was going to talk to her. I knew we had something a little more than just a civil standby. She had some substantial evidence and information.
When they went to the residence, they found Shirley there with Aunt Pat. The deputy public guardian had a very pointed and direct conversation with Shirley about the nature of the financial improprieties that they were aware of based on Pat's financial documents. And Shirley was taken aback, to say the least.
Miss Remmert was nervous. She was inconsistent. At that point, she threw her hands up and said, I liquidated the money.
What?
It's in my room. And at that point, I escorted her to her bedroom. She then pulled out a box of money. In the end, after counting, it was about $80,400. Due to Miss Remmert's inconsistencies with her answers, and finally showing us the money that she did liquidate, I arrested her.
Most financial elder abuse investigations are complex, and we generally advise law enforcement to gather their evidence and then consult with the district attorney's office to see what the next steps are before taking a suspect into custody. But in this particular case, the fact that the quick-thinking East Palo Alto Police Department apprehended Miss Remmert on the spot was crucial to our ability to not only preserve the cash that was seized from the home, but also to freeze the home and execute a search warrant. And a tremendous amount of crucial documentary evidence was discovered. This document over here, it says quit claim deed. When you signed this, did you believe that you were giving away your house?
Oh no, I'm not giving away my house.
The fact that the victim of a crime has dementia shouldn't necessarily indicate to you that that person cannot be a witness, and an important witness in their own case. Do you want to continue to own your house until you die?
When I die, my people divide my house.
These are the kinds of cases that are nuanced. They typically involve very complex family dynamics that have taken decades to evolve and are only getting worse as time progresses. So if there's history with that family, Adult Protective Services will be able to provide that to you while you're in the field. And that situation that's in front of you that you're looking at is going to look really different through the lens of all of that information than it does when you're just standing on the porch with someone trying to figure out whose paperwork is more legitimate than whose.
At the end of the jury trial, Ms. Remmert was convicted of multiple felonies, and the trial judge sentenced her to 7 years and 4 months in the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. The cash that had been seized from the home was released back to the victim, and the judge signed an order voiding the deed and returning Miss King's home to its rightful owner.
So here within San Mateo County, we do have a task force to address financial abuse for our older independent adult community members. We are called EDAPT. Like I mentioned, Elder Independent Adult Protection Team. We have 3 social workers who investigate financial abuse referrals, 2 detectives at our district attorney's office, including our attorney here who actually created our task force. And then myself, I'm the one who goes out to the community. Go to libraries, senior centers. I co-facilitate trainings with police departments, legal aid society. So we're all about bringing awareness about older independent adult abuse, but also bringing the topic of scam prevention, financial prevention for our community members at large. And that is due to Measure K funding. That's how we actually have our task force. So just know that if you do have any concerns and you want to make a report, everything's 100% confidential. You don't have to be Inspector Gadget and have all the information. You just need to have a suspicion. We'll pass that because you guys are not mandated. But here within the county of San Mateo, for all services, this is the number you want to write down for adult protective services. But also, as I talk about our programs, this is the number. This is this is everything aging and adult related. If you're looking for resources, for instance, and that I do not cover, please call our hotline here. Request the Help at Home Handbook. We have it online. I'll tell you, it's like 100 pages of PDF. And I know a lot of folks like the traditional book. If you would like that, just give our social workers a call. They can mail you one. We even have scam prevention packets if that's something you're interested in too. But we have 3 social workers Monday through Friday. We're everything resource based. For instance, if you have a friend who can't get out as often to access food, we can connect you to Meals and on Wheels, or see if what city the person lives in to see if there's anything food-wise support we can connect you to. If you would like to access in-home support services, which is a program I will mention shortly, this is where you would call to start this referral process. So as I mentioned, hands down, this is the number you want to give us a call. And let's talk about other programs. I'm sure a lot of you guys are here for this one. But conservatorship, we do have our public guardians unit, and they handle conservatorships. And conservatorships can look different. A general conservatorship is basically somebody who's older, possibly also disabled, but they're not legally able to provide any type of healthcare, food, clothing, shelter on their own behalf. Keep in mind, it is extremely hard to get a conservatorship. It's not easy. Most of us are going to live in a gray area when it comes to capacity and memory, because the first stop to start this process has to be the medical team. The medical team has to make that diagnosis that that person can no longer safely make decisions on their behalf. And it is really, really hard to have a medical team do that, which is a good thing, because that means we're trying to keep adults independent as long as we legally can. We also have limited conservatorships. These are conservatorships for adults with developmental disabilities. They tend to be not as strict because they're customized to that adult individual, and they want to make them as independent as possible while also having protection as well. Between that, we have different conservatorships. A person can be conserved or their estate. So if a person's conserved, that just means that the judge has signed off an agreement for this person to be no longer able to make decisions on their behalf, and an appointed conservatee will be making that decision for them. The person will be responsible for food, clothing, shelter. The person, in regards to the estate, that means they're going to be handling the individual's financial matters. So somebody can be concerned financially, but not personally. One size does not fit all, and that's kind of how life is. So some can have one or the other. We do have another conservatorship. It's called LPS. And these conservatorships are for individuals living with mental health. That is different than an older adult later on in life getting advanced Alzheimer's, advanced dementia. These are people living with mental health. And typically this kind of conservatorship is with our behavioral health department, and a local agency would start this conservatorship. Typically, the conservatorship for LPS is about a year. A judge can extend, and that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Our public administrator's office, this is a very unique department that I think is overlooked a lot. Our public administrator serves individuals who have passed on, and there's nobody able to make burial arrangements. Maybe nobody steps up to claim the deceased individual's body and so forth. If someone happens to pass away and they don't have any family or friends or any support systems willing to take over the responsibility of the deceased person, our department steps in. They will make a burial arrangements. They will really liquidate any assets. They're going to do their best to see if any locate any heirs to an estate. And they're also going to try to protect the person's property from any type of loss or theft. This program is also available to the public, and there is this percentage fee, I think possibly 4%. I can be wrong. I don't have that exact number, but it is actually open for the public as well. And let's mention supportive services. This is linkages. So when we're talking about older adults, our social workers are not long-term case carrying social workers, which is much different than the children's when we are working with children. Some children had social workers for years. Here with adults, the social worker goes out, see if there's any way they can assist for resources or support, information, and then they walk away because we're adults. We're not here for long term. If a person does need some additional support, we do have a social worker. We have one. She's awesome. And she will work with older adults up to 6 months. And as long as a person is not receiving services in any other type of program, she can, she's all about connecting, supporting, even if that person needs additional support. So like I said, that's linkages. And Home Safe. Home Safe is a program that will be ending, I believe, by June. It's a state program for adult protective services clients. And so if a client qualifies, it's a program to be able to support housing. And housing, and this one is a very, very unique one because a person could be experiencing homelessness. A person can also be a homeowner, but maybe fell behind on some bills. And so this program's really seeing how we can stabilize places. For instance, another example I heard, a gentleman in his 90s, his housing was at risk because he was in the hospital for a few months and he was renting a room somewhere. So this program was able to stabilize his housing when he came back out and paid any back rent that was owed. So it's really unique that the state gives a program that we're able to really look outside the box of how we support older independent adults. Like I mentioned, this program is for adult protective services clients. And our most popular in-home support services, also known as IHSS. This is a state program and it's run by each county. And the program is all about supporting individuals aging at home as long as possible. These are for individuals over 65 and on Medi-Cal, or if you're not sure, always just give us a call. But the program is for lower income individuals. Keep in mind, it is not a 24/7 kind of caregiving program. There's only going to be a certain hours approved by the social worker. And if there's additional needs, the individual and family will have to kind of look over that person's need. But it's a program that's really here to support kind of care within a house, such as house cleaning, meal preparations, possibly grocery shopping, personal care, and so forth. And so this program is extremely popular. You can also have a family member get paid. And if you do not have a person designated to be the caregiver, that's when our public authority steps in. The public authority is a state program, but we actually work hand in hand, and they do the outreach of trying to connect families with caregivers. We have a nationwide shortage of caregivers, so they're always supporting our caregivers we have with trainings, education, support, while also doing outreach to recruit new caregivers as well. Lastly, and this isn't something you would apply for, but just know that if there's an individual through IHSS who is now having higher level of needs, that person would possibly be recommended for our enhanced case management. Your average social worker who handles the in-home support, also known as IHSS, cases, they might see people once to twice a year. This program, the social worker might be able to see the person weekly and has a smaller caseload because the needs are higher. This could be people who are constantly going to the emergency room, constantly falling. The social worker is going to come in and see how they can support that person as long as they can be independent as possible. So lastly, that's a lot of information, but here is my information. If you guys want to just reach out, maybe you have a question later, my phone number and email. And like I said, hopefully if I didn't cover the resource, you're more than welcome to ask. We specifically at our hotline have those help at home books, and they're awesome. They're books of all the resources for older adults, and within our community every year we update them, and we have a coalition who calls to make sure the phone number is relevant. So thank you once again, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Cassie. That's a lot of great information. Any questions?
I just want to say I saw you last week, I think it was, at Arroyo Green Apartments.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate all the information, and I've been passing it around.
Wonderful. Thank
Very
you.
Great. If we don't have any questions, we will let Cassie go. And thank you for always being an amazing presenter.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon. Take care, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.